Well, welcome to Caring for New Hampshire, a Ministry of Concerned Women for America here in New Hampshire. I'm Elaine Driscoll, State Director. And this is a special series that we're doing called Upfront and Personal with our presidential candidates for 2012. And it's been very interesting. I have learned a tremendous amount, and I hope you will too. And so right now we have with us presidential candidate Joe Story. Welcome, Mr.
Thank
Story.
you very much.
I'm so pleased to have you with us. And part of what we do is we want to give you an opportunity to let people know who you are. And so if you can just share with us a little bit about maybe some of your history and what's brought you to this point where you've decided to throw your hat in the ring for presidential candidate race.
Okay, the biggest issue facing me has been personal responsibility and people taking responsibility for the decisions that they make, and knowing that if you have two choices before you and you listen to that little voice inside your head and morally you think you should do one thing but you choose the other, sooner or later you're going to be held responsible for it. And it gets real personal with me. I got snake bit about 30 years ago, and I was just buying flowers in a nursery. And the voice inside my head says, do not pick up that pot of flowers over here. I bought 10 pots of flowers, right? I bought 9, picked up 9, put them in the car, and I reached for the 10th pot that I wasn't supposed to pick up, but I got in a big hurry. And I got snake bit. And I woke up the next morning in the hospital, and the first words I heard was the doctor telling my wife that I think he might survive. Couldn't see out of my eye or anything else. It took me a year to do that again. And in the 30 years since that time, it's really gotten to the point where you get attuned to listening and obeying what you should be doing. And I wound up on top of the Empire State Building shortly after 9/11, and I was very much impacted by it and saying, God, how and why would you let that happen? And what can we as a country and what can I personally do about that? We need to make amends, because what would cause it? I mean, why would you let it happen to us? And I wound up studying Deuteronomy 28, which was George Washington's prayer for our nation when he took the first inauguration. And the first 14 verses say, if you follow my word and do what I ask you to do, you will be the greatest nation on earth. And we accomplished that. We did what was called for. And from there on, it gets kind of difficult, because once you start turning your back on God, lots of things negative start happening. And that's where we are today. So my objective has become to define who we are as a nation and how we got to where we're at today, and see what we can do to get us back to the constitutional basis and the Judeo-Christian values that we were founded upon. And that's what's dear to my heart.
And you were sharing with me that that our Constitution was based on the on the 10 Commandments that God gave us. Well, it was derived, a lot of the essence of what those commandments are inculcated into our justice system, and as well as how the 3 branches of government are set up to be balances with each other, checks and balances. And so that, I think, is a very amazing thing to contemplate.
You know, if you think about it, if you look back at all the early documents in the founding of the country, even the Supreme Court building, across the top of the Supreme Court building, which you'll see on my website, is Moses holding the 10 Commandments, which serve as the basis of the common law for our country, for the people that don't necessarily believe the Christian values that we believe, because this is the other side of it. As a Christian nation, we believe that you have the moral fortitude to make the correct decision. If we had to depend upon laws, we would be in serious trouble, because then only the people that write the laws know which laws they want to enforce and choose who they're going to enforce them against. That's how we wind up with 150,000 pages of laws that can be enforced by over 50 agencies today, when the Constitution only had 3 federal laws and they required a criminal intent, piracy, treason, and counterfeit. So when you think about it, personal intent is the foundational basis of the country as well as what happens today. The difference being, when the country was founded, the legal authorities had to prove that you had intent to commit a crime. Today, all they have to do is come get you. And hence, once they determine, hey, this is a law and you violated it, they can put virtually anybody in jail. And we wind up, I think the average statistics now is over 30%, actually over 33% of our children are going to have a legal run-in with the law that will follow them for the rest of their lives. And if you look at that statistic and think about how much that can affect somebody's life from now on out, you got to break it. I mean, you can't make people be so dependent on trying to follow laws that they know nothing about and have no clue about. You got to get back to a simple basis so people understand and have the commitment and the knowledge about what's going on in order to follow the laws. Because simple choice, when you make that choice, it should be clear to you. If it's a moral choice and you make the right choice, you would not have any issues. That's not the case today. You can make a morally correct decision and still be breaking tons of laws just simply because you don't know them.
That is so true. And I myself, because I do keep track of not only on the state level, but also on the national level, there are so many laws made every year. I'm like, I don't know how we can possibly follow them all and stay within the parameters of the law. And it's actually a joke amongst many of us, you know, because if you have 1,000 bills being passed every year, there's just no way you can.
There's no way that can happen, and quite frankly, it's because we've got a government that has really run amok in terms of agencies and doing stuff that is non-constitutional. Really, what we need to do is separate the government from the enforcement side of it, and stop having agencies that have a capability of actually closing businesses or requiring them to do $50 million worth of paperwork just to be in compliance with new rules and regulations. I mean, businesses are in business to make a product. And when you are working as a business, the components and the stuff that you put into the product should be the primary cost of the business, not compliance with federal regulations that you have to have an army of people to understand how they compete with you. That's why we don't have small business. I mean, I love New Hampshire because of the simplicity of the laws allows New Hampshire to have the most number of small businesses per capita of any place in the country.
We do.
And it's good from that standpoint because it's so critical to eliminate the complications in the system and make it where people know what they're doing and what they're responsible for. And when you look at it, then everything becomes easy in the system because it's open, it's honest, and there's clarity. So
you're very much for limited government and really staying to our Constitution.
I am very much for limited government and staying to the Constitution. And I have a clear pathway to get there, too. You know, we're in financial dire straits because of the tax situation and the complications of you can't know where you stand on the tax system because so many people actually have means of avoiding taxes. That you know, just because somebody is making $200 million a year doesn't mean they're paying any taxes at all because they can avoid them by having the right deductions. Well, if you had a very clear system that said we're going to take 10% of your personal income, regardless of who you are or corporation, and that is going to be the tax structure. It's really easy. If you make the money, you pay the tax.
So you're for a flat tax?
I am for a flat tax in that regard. The other thing we do is we have to get out from under the burden that this government, our past few administrations, have really created for us of debt. Actually, since 1969, we've gone into debt. And at $15 trillion, what you have to do on top of that 10% is make a plan, call it a 50-year plan to get out of debt, and add a percentage onto the 10% of 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5%, whatever it takes to pay down that debt and get out of the debt. So you got a fixed percentage there. And the other side of it means you have to have a balanced budget based on the 10%. And then Congress, with a 3/4% majority, can vote and change the percentage for the pay down of the debt. And also they could vote for emergency contingency funds in there for national disasters and war and stuff like that. But it would have to be so important that the majority of Congress would do it. I mean, not just a simple majority, but a super majority, and put it back where it's at. And then you do away with all of these federal agencies that have no constitutional basis of law. You know, you think about it, they are putting so much force back into the states and affecting even what happens in your own home and your own school system, that they create complications. Simple ones, you know, against the 14th Amendment, school system. I mean, you know, the Department of Education should not be making rules and regulations that affect local schools. If you're going to have a National Department of Education, it should be just statistics, collecting information about what's going on. And really, the value of it would be to promote our educational system and knowledge of the world, not inside America.
I think that was the original intent of the Department of Education.
You know, I think you're correct. And actually, that's a good point, too, because if you take those agencies that we have, and if you go back and you read and study what their original intent was of their founding and their implementation, and you see if they've managed to accomplish any of that, and if they haven't, you really have some serious questions. Should they even be in existence? And you know, when we have a federal agencies or a federal government that has increased their expenditures by over 15% in the last 3 years, in this kind of time frame, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, we really have to straighten out the government and get it back to an efficient, functioning system where it is just the government side of it. And one way you do that is also you eliminate the government from the benefits programs and from owning all these corporations. Government should not be in business. Government is to function as the oversight of all of our state governments and to provide for the national defense. And if you look at it, that was the constitutional objective.
That was the constitutional objective, and at this point, we're minimizing our military and defense systems, and they are expanding into every other aspect of our lives.
That is so much correct. When you look at it, benefits now is all consuming in the federal government. And because that is the case, the people who get the benefits are catering to the politicians who vote the benefits in for them. And the classic example of the failure of democracy is when the people can vote for the benefits that they achieve from the people that they put in office, because then they just continue to do so. Everybody likes their own congressman, but they hate the rest of them. That's how you wind up with Congress with less than a 9% rating. So it's a real struggle from that standpoint. So the next side of it is to say you have to separate the benefits programs from the federal government, because it shouldn't be there. Justifiably so, if you got companies that the federal government owns now, and actually you call it we the people own and not the federal government, you just got to get the government under control of that. And the way you do that is you set up what I call a ABC, American Benefits Corporation. Instead of having Social Security and welfare and all the other stuff, you've got an American Benefits Corporation. And you take all of these companies that we paid billions of dollars for, hundreds of billions of dollars for, and you get them out of the government and out from under government control, and you put them in this for-profit corporation. And it's a stock corporation. Rather than buying Social Security or putting money into Social Security, you're actually buying stock in a corporation that's there to make money and to do stuff with the products and the things that we do on a national basis. I mean, if you think about it, if we moved all of those companies that are in trouble and those assets that we own as a nation into a benefits corporation and made it efficient and separate from the government so that it's controlled by a group of people that are put into place by the stockholders, not the federal government, not somebody that's voted into office. And it's created so that America has some way of actually competing in a world that is run by sovereign wealth funds and national funds. I mean, if you think about it, we are the richest company in the country in the world.
We are.
But we're the most indebted country in the world. And there's no reason why we should be in that situation.
Well, I've always thought of it as being the fact that our Congress is authorizing more spending than we're producing. So I don't know if that's totally correct, if that's too simplistic, but when I look at the fact that they say, well, we didn't increase, but they had already accounted for that increase in the budget in the previous year, so they actually did increase, but what they're looking at now is an increase for the next year. And when they talk about we cut spending, all they did was cut what they were projecting to have for the next year. So
yeah, baseline budgeting is like crazy. I mean, when you think about it, if you say, hey, you know, you made $50,000 last year, and you're going to base your life on the fact that you're going to make, you know, a 10% increase in that this year, but business is way down. You know, that's kind of dumb. And when you go out and you borrow far more than you make and say, now, you know, rather than $50,000, I borrowed $100,000 last year, and I'm going to base my new budget on $200,000, but I'm still making 50. That's our government. And when you think about it, we did a baseline government on $1 trillion, and now we're increasing it from that. I mean, that's not rocket science to figure out. It ain't going to work.
7 trillion or something crazy like that?
Yes, yeah.
You know, it's really funny. My youngest daughter said to me the other day, she goes, Mom, did you realize that up until just a couple of years ago, $1 trillion wasn't even in our vocabulary?
Yes, isn't that fascinating? I mean, how could we arrive at $1 trillion in such a short period of time?
It's mind-blowing.
Yes, it is.
It is mind-blowing.
And when you think about the fact that we are burdening our children with that debt, and they will never know an America that has freedom of liberty of conscience and liberty to do things that we knew as kids. I mean, it's changed so much in the previous 40 years. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, the freedoms, the safety, everything about America has gone south because we have started the pathway or down the pathway where we do not care what happens to the next person.
Right. Well, let's tell me, what do you see on the international scene as a president? What kind of actions would you like to see taken on the international scene?
The international scene is critical to us. I think we're at a crossroads of how America can be seen internationally too. We have always been a giving and forgiving and a Christian nation that went out of its way to help people, and we can't forget that. I mean, people are really the critical issue for everybody. And if you treat people right, it changes the nature of things. And
that's been our premise.
Yeah, that's been our premise forever.
For a long time.
And on the international basis, there are two issues that we have to face. And the first is critically getting our house in order. I think right now, the biggest thing we have to do is, from a homeland defensive standpoint, is to know who we have in this country and why they're here, and make means to allow the people that are here for good reasons and for honorable reasons a pathway to achieve citizenship if they want to, or a pathway to work, or if they don't, we've got to figure out how to handle them. We can't have 11 million people running around our country in isolated cultural groups that are dividing us. I mean, if you think about it, in the past 10 years, we've had over 10 million children that we should be raising with firm American values that have been aborted, that have been replaced by an identical number of illegal aliens that we have no knowledge of what their intent is, and they're isolated so much in a subculture that they're not getting the American values. They're not learning the American values, and they're dropping out of schools. They're doing stuff that just is really super critical in terms of the continuity of America as we know it.
And American values.
And the American values. Right.
And it wasn't that long ago. I mean, when I was growing up in school, it was every day we talked about America and American values, and you know how lucky we were to live in the United States and to be grateful for what we had. And I'm not sure that's happening anymore.
I am almost positive that's not happening anymore. You know, my namesake is Joseph Kennedy. Not Joseph Kennedy, Joseph Story. I'll get it right in a minute, folks. Joseph Story was a Supreme Court justice and one of the founders of Harvard. And he did the commentaries on the Constitution. And they're very well written because they were at about the same time as the Constitution came into play. And one of the things that he said is they arrived at the conclusion that if we did not make a provision to teach our children the religious values and the Christian foundation of this nation, that sooner or later a future generation was going to have to deal with it. And they couldn't at that point in time arrive at a way to teach it because there was so much struggle between 13 colonies trying to figure out how to provide freedom of religion. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're at that point where we have to define how we are going to teach the values that made us the nation we are to the future generations if it's going to continue as the United States of America and a Christian nation.
That is so true. And you know, another well-known figure, especially here in New Hampshire, was Daniel Webster. He also said, you know, if we are not able to promulgate the reasons for why our government was set up the way it is, and teach it to our children and be good. You know, in our Constitution, in our state Constitution, we are admonished to study our Constitution and know the reasons for why it is written the way it is, and to discuss it almost on a daily basis. And that's in Part 1, Article 32 of our Constitution. So this was very important to the men and women of that age, that what they had created would be passed on to the next generation, because they understood that freedom is very fleeting.
Yes, freedom is so fleeting if you don't understand where it comes from and why it's there and how it was achieved, because people have fought and died for freedom, for our personal freedoms that we enjoy. And you know, the real challenge is if you took the constitutions of the 13 colonies when they founded America, and you put them into the school system, right now it would be illegal to study them in the school systems because every one of them pertains to Christianity in a great degree. So you couldn't even study those documents without running into legal complications.
And the same thing is happening in colleges, because so much of literature is based on the Christian faith that teachers are finding that they can't teach it because it means they have to refer back to the Christian Bible in order for full comprehension of the meaning of those pieces of text.
Yeah, and the same thing applies there. I mean, the colleges can't teach what they were founded to do. If you go back to the foundational documents for Harvard as an example, it was founded to teach pastors to go out so that there would be a learned generation of people that know what the values are when they get out into government. And it's so far removed from that now. They should almost burn their own foundational document and start over again. If they really believe the things that they're espousing now in the school, you know, they got some serious issues because they don't comply with what their foundational documents are, just like we are not complying with the Constitution.
Right, right. Oh, well, it's good that we're able to discuss this and bring it out so that people can contemplate it. And if they've never thought of it in that viewpoint before, maybe it will be pause for them to go and do some research and find out if what is being shared here is really true.
Yeah, and that's my objective. I mean, you can go to my website.
Yes, please give us your website.
averagejoeforpresident.com, and you will see discussions on any of these issues, or a lot of these issues. And if you like something, you know, pass it along, look at it. I mean, the whole objective is to rouse a debate about the issues to get them in the national mainstream. And the way you do that is just tell people about it, pass your idea along, put the email address in there or the web address on your emails, and let people know we're talking about it, we're thinking about it. It's the people of the United States that are going to make the difference, the average people, not the people that are spending millions and billions of dollars in this case on elections that drive us all crazy by seeing these stupid ads every day, every 5 minutes on TV. It's what we think and what we do and the lives that we lead as ordinary people that are going to make the difference.
Absolutely.
And so you do have to get involved with it.
I want to thank you so much, Mr. Story, for being with us, and we wish you all blessings with the mission that God's laid on your heart.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and yes, God bless America, and let's pray for our country.
Amen.